Yeah.
Eldon, tú nos dices cuando ya estamos.
Sí, ya se está configurando. Yo creo que en unos... Ahorita...
Can you see my screen as well?
Yeah.
Ya está.
Yeah.
Tú nos dices cuando ya.
Sí, ya está.
Okay. So we're going to get started. Good afternoon, Mexico, everyone. Good morning in Australia. We want to welcome our guest today, Professor Ghil'ad Zuckerman, on behalf of the University of Baja California, the Department of Languages, the Graduate Research Seminar of this department, and the Research and Applied Studies on Indigenous Languages program, PIALI, to this academic and public space for dissemination and discussion of new ideas, trends, and actions on the dimension of linguistic diversity, language rights, and language conservation. And so these subjects that we consider urgent to talk about and to engage with in our university and in Baja California in general. And that's the reason we are organizing these periodic conferences. So we invite you to stay connected and to join us in the future for further conferences. Professor, I'm going to introduce you now in Spanish. Okay. No sé si alguien tiene prendido el micrófono por ahí. Les pido por favor que apaguen sus micrófonos para que se pueda escuchar. ¿Ok? Buenas tardes a todos, buenos días en Australia. Le agradecemos al doctor Zuckerman su disposición para participar con nosotros en esta conferencia. Le damos la bienvenida en nombre de la UABC, de la Facultad de Idiomas, del Seminario de Investigación de Posgrado y el nuevo Programa de Investigación y Estudios Aplicados en Lenguas Indígenas, PIALI, en este espacio de discusión y difusión de nuevas ideas y acciones sobre la diversidad lingüística. Voy a presentar un poco brevemente el currículum del doctor Zuckerman, que es bastante extenso. El doctor Zuckerman es doctor por la Universidad de Oxford y la Universidad de Cambridge y maestro por la Universidad de Tel Aviv. Actualmente tiene el cargo de jefe de Departamento de Lingüística y Lenguas Amenazadas de la Universidad de Adelaida en Australia y es el jefe de investigación de un proyecto de gran escala en torno a la recuperación de lenguas y salud mental auspiciado por el Consejo Australiano de Salud e Investigación Médica. Es autor de varias y de gran número de trabajos de investigación, entre los que, bueno, voy a destacar ahorita Revivalistics, From the Genesis of Israeli to Language Reclamation in Australia and Beyond, que ahí está mostrando profesor. Revivalística, del génesis del israelí a la recuperación de lenguas en Australia y más allá. Otras publicaciones, Language Contact and Lexical Enrichment in Israeli Hebrew. Aquí está. Engaging, a guide to interacting respectfully and reciprocally with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, entre otros, varios otros libros y publicaciones. Ha sido editor de revistas de investigación como Burning Issues in Afroasiatic Linguistics, Jewish Language Contact, entre otras. Ha dictado cátedra en varias universidades internacionales como la Shanghai International Studies University, la Universidad de Cambridge, la Universidad de Queensland, la National University of Singapore, entre otras varias. Y también ha sido honrado con diversas prestigiosas becas de investigación y financiamientos como la Weizmann Institute of Science, la Fundación Rockefeller. Bueno, esto por citar solamente algunas de ellas. El doctor Zuckerman es miembro electo del Instituto Australiano de Estudios Aborígenes e Isleños del Estrecho de Torres y de la Fundación para Lenguas Amenazadas. También es presidente de la Asociación Australiana de Estudios Judíos Y bueno, fundamentalmente el doctor Zuckerman es fundador de Revivalistics o Revivalística, un campo transdisciplinario de investigación que concierne a la recuperación, a la revitalización y revigorización de lenguas, y desde el cual ha trabajado en conjunto con la comunidad Barngarla, pueblo originario de Australia, en la recuperación de su lengua materna, la lengua Barngarla. Bueno, sin más, le cedo la palabra al doctor Zuckerman. Please, professor, you can go ahead. Your microphone is off.
Mute. Can you hear me now? It's wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for the introduction. I prefer to give this lecture in English simply because if I gave it in Spanish, it would have sounded eventually like Italian, which I speak. So, but I can understand everything almost in Spanish, so you can ask me questions if you prefer in Spanish, and then I will answer in English. Now, this lecture is called Revivalistics, and as Carlos generously mentioned, it has exactly the same title as this new book that has just been published by Oxford University Press. I call it the Book of Genesis because it's from the genesis of Israeli to language reclamation in Australia and beyond. And the book actually tells my life story, but it is an academic scholarly book. So it's about language revival. So let me show you some photos from my life. Firstly, and these photos all reflect what you need to do when you reclaim sleeping beauty or dreaming beauty languages. Firstly, although most languages of the world are oral, only oral, they do not have any script traditionally, you do need a lot of work and a lot of literary work. So this is, for example, at the University of Oxford that Carlos mentioned. I would also like to thank Etna for being in touch with me before this lecture. And this is in 1999. So language revival has to do with resources. Language revival has to do with resilience. This is your humble servant, meaning myself, on the left in 1993. And of course, the famous boxer Muhammad Ali. Now, if you know anything about boxing, Muhammad Ali was there for the long run. He was resilient. He was an athlete. He knew how to make sure that his opponent would just fall after a while. He was not like a Rambo that knocks you out within a second. He was there for the long run. And in language revival, you need the patience of a saint. You need the heart of gold, and you need the balls of steel. I don't know how you say balls of steel in Spanish, but of course it doesn't mean that you need to be a man. You can be a woman as well. It's just a metaphor. So it has to do with resilience. Language revival, as Carlos mentioned in his introduction, has to do with mental health. This is something that I have discovered when I reclaim sleeping beauty languages, languages that have no native speakers anymore. Aboriginal people tell me that they feel empowered. They feel that their well-being has been improved, which is an amazing result. And if you think about it, it has the potential to change governmental funding, because governmental funding for language is usually regarded as humanities and arts. And we know that there is no money for the humanities. However, if we redefine language reclamation and revitalization and reinvigoration as part of health, as part of medicine, that has the potential of being a game changer. This is Clamor Wilhelm Schumann. Clamor Wilhelm Schumann was a Lutheran Christian German missionary, and in 1844 he wrote down a dictionary of the Bangala. Let me repeat, it's not Bangala, it's Bangala. Bangala. Bangala is spelled with an R because this is a retroflex. A retroflex is what you have in Indian languages. Would you like a chicken tikka? Chicken tikka. You know, you go to an Indian restaurant, you always have this retroflex with your tongue curled back. Bangala. Bangala. So he wrote the dictionary of Bangala in order to Christianize the heathens, in quotation marks, to show them the light, in quotation marks. And his light was, well, in Italian is il Padre, il Figlio e lo Spirito Santo, the Christian light. I, a Jew, obviously a secular Jew, so I'm not religious at all, use a dictionary written by a German Lutheran Christian missionary in order to assist Bangala Aboriginal people reconnect with their past that has been obliterated by, in my view, by missionary activities. So it has some kind of symmetric righting the wrong of the past, because we use this dictionary for the opposite reason, not to teach about the West, but rather to learn about Aboriginality, which has been obliterated, which has been destroyed by stolen generations. This is when the government of Australia stole Aboriginal children from their mothers. It's called the stolen generations phenomenon. And this is, of course, following the linguicide, as we will see, language killing, linguicide, that happened in Australia. So this is a symmetric endeavor. This is Harry Dare here. He's an Aboriginal Bangala man, and you can see him in the app. You can go to, if you have an iPhone or an Android, you can look for Bangala dictionary, and you can get a free app which will teach you Bangala. What is interesting here, and this is another thing which is very symmetric, technology killed indigenous languages in the form of ships coming from Europe to the New World, whether it's South America, whether Central America, whether it's North America, whether it's Australia, and the black cars of the governmental officials that came and stole the Aboriginal children. This is technology. Now we use technology in order to reconnect with a linguicided Sleeping Beauty, with a Sleeping Beauty, the language that was killed, linguicided. So this is another symmetric righting the wrong of the past. So you can see that although this is linguistics, it's a linguistic lecture, revivalistics also has to do with law, mental health, anthropology, art, music, pedagogy, architecture. It's a totally transdisciplinary field of inquiry, as Carlos mentioned when he introduced the term revivalistica or revivalistics. This is Howard Richards here with the blue shirt. Howard Richards was stolen from his mother when he was a young teenager with his brothers, who were just children before they were teenagers. He introduced me to the Bangala community 10 years ago, and we've had an amazing journey together, reconnecting with the Bangala language, resulting, for example, in this book, which is called Bangali di Manu, which means speaking Bangala together. Bangala is a fascinating language that is very complex when it comes to cases. For example, it has the ergative case. When it comes to kinship, it has many, many pronouns, which is very common to Aboriginal people in Australia, where kinship is extremely important. So if I talk to you and say I'm related to you through my mother, then I will use we too, a different pronoun than if I'm related to you through my father. So this is a kinship sensitive language. It has beautiful phenomena. For example, the word wadlada means both tree and also communication. So is it just homophony? Is it the case that there is some relationship between tree, as in tree, albero, and communication? You know, why is a tree related to communication, etc.? Obviously, it's not an English phenomenon. And this is what you see in 2018. We have more people participating, taking part in this endeavor, many babies, many old people. So the main question of today's lecture is, why on earth should we invest time and money in reviving dead languages or killed languages? I'm going to give you, in the 20 or so minutes that I have remaining, 3 types of reasons. The first one is ethical, what is right. The second one is aesthetic, what is beautiful. And the third one is utilitarian, what is useful. I'm not going to go through all the slides because I have been asked to restrict myself to max 35 minutes and then to open the floor for questions. But you will understand that there is a lot of material within this presentation and within my book that might be of some interest to you. There are many related questions that I would like you to consider. For example, as I alluded to earlier, is there a link between language and mental health? The short answer, yes. Should we financially compensate indigenous people for the loss of their native tongues? The short answer, yes. And this is distinct from compensation for the loss of land. Should indigenous languages be defined as official languages, for example, of Australia? Currently, there are no official languages in Australia. The short answer, yes. Should we erect bilingual signs? Currently, it's very rare to see bilingual signs. A sign, for example, in English and in Bangla. You go to Port Lincoln, nobody knows there that the word for Port Lincoln is Galinyala, which is the original word for this area. They all call it Port Lincoln. So the answer is yes. Does language dictate the way we think? Well, the short answer is no, but it influences the way we think. It does not dictate the way we think, but it influences it. Is it possible at all to reclaim a sleeping, dreaming beauty, dead language? The answer is yes, but you will have cross-fertilization with the revivalists' mother tongues. In other words, if you reclaim a dead language, you will never be able to go back to the original language. It will always be a mishmash, a hybrid, yes, and a syncretism, a cross-fertilization between the language you are trying to reclaim and your own languages. So, for example, if you speak Spanish and you're trying to reclaim an indigenous language in Mexico, the result, and this language has no native speakers, the result will be that you will speak a hybrid language based on both that language and Spanish. One example that is beautiful from Ecuador, which was a bad success of a language, is of course media lengua. Media lengua in Ecuador is 93% of its vocabulary Spanish. But the chassis, you know, in cars you have a chassis, yeah? So the structure is Quechua. So this is called relaxification. When you take Quechua, which is an indigenous language, of course, and you replace all the words within it with Spanish words. The result is Quechua relaxified by Spanish. That's not a success story. A success story is when you actually have a real hybrid, in the sense that many grammatical features come from Quechua, many grammatical features come from Spanish, many lexical items come from Quechua, many lexical items come from Spanish, etc. It's more hybridic throughout, whereas Media Lengua was a specifically relexified language. So relexification is, from my own perspective, a failed revival, but still it's better than the alternative. 7 Jews have changed the world. Moses said everything is in the head. Jesus said everything is in the heart. Marx said everything is in the stomach. Yeah, you cannot see my stomach. I'm losing a lot of weight. So Freud said, I'm not going to show you, everything is in the loins. Zuckerman, that's me, said everything is in the tongue. Zuckerberg, that's Mark, the black sheep of our family. He says everything is in the finger. You know, this is Facebook. But the cleverest Jew of all said everything is relative. This is Einstein. And why do I say that everything is relative? Because the success of language revival is relative. And this has to do with a cross-fertilization. So when we revive a language, we need to have helpers, facilitators. The person you see on the left, Robert Wilton, is a speaker, a native speaker of Agnya Matna, which is a related language to Bangala. He still speaks his language natively. He knows how to pronounce Bangala with a retroflex. He knows how the vowels work, etc. He helps me to teach the Bangala people how to pronounce their language, which is related. So it's a little bit like, say, God forbid, Spanish is dead, and I, as an Italian speaker, go and teach the people who would like to reclaim Spanish phonology using my Italian phonology. You understand? Because there is a lot of similarity. Yeah, we say in Italian, we say lo spagnolo è la brutta copia dell'italiano. In Spanish, you would say el italiano es la brutta copia del español. Yeah, so it's like the rough copy. So what I'm saying is that you can use a language that is related and still has native speakers in an attempt to reclaim the other language. Language revival is all over the world. I go to 100 countries to reclaim languages. Of course, COVID-19 is a big shitty situation when it comes to in-situ travel, a horrible situation. But we have we have become all zombies as in too much Zoom. And Zoom allows us, or other programs allow us to talk. So I'm in Adelaide now. I woke up early to come. You are in Baja California. I guess it's not that early for you, but it's one day earlier. This is, for example, in Platfontein in South Africa, totally endangered language, unfortunately. This is Jungwasi. Jungwasi is in Namibia, Botswana. This language is extremely endangered. You might have heard some sentences from this language in a film called The Gods Are Crazy. Have you heard of this film? Gods Are Crazy. Yeah, it's a funny film. Many years ago. Many of you might have been not born, but yeah. Anyway, so this is their height. This is the height of the people. It's not because they are young. This is after puberty. So, and I am only 189. I mean, not only, I'm 189. So I'm taller than Muhammad Ali, as you saw. This is in Urak Lawoi, Koh Lanta in Krabi, Thailand. Again, these are the gypsies of the sea. Their language is severely endangered. We are trying to reclaim it, to revive it within the school. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. This is Margaret Mead. It's beautiful because if you look at my mother tongue, which is Israeli or reclaimed Hebrew, it was revived by a very small group of people who were considered by others crazy, mad. They were jailed. Eliezer Ben Yehuda was jailed because the ultra-Orthodox Jews said that he was doing something wrong. He was desecrating the holy language of Isaiah. So everybody knew the language in the synagogue, which is like a church, yeah, for the Jews, but they didn't speak it at home, whereas he wanted it to be spoken at home. So that's my mother tongue. Eliezer ben Yehuda's grandson is here on the right, and I met him in Israel several years ago, and it was a great meeting. This is Ganu Ganu Muna, a new word for beanie. It means sheltered hat. Of course, in 1844, you didn't have beanies, so we need to neologize. These are Bangala people, Bangala people, Bangala people. And in the middle, you have a friend of mine who died. She recorded the last Bangala speaker, the last person who knew some Bangala. I must study politics and war, that my sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy. My sons ought to study mathematics, philosophy, geography, natural history, naval architecture, navigation, commerce, and agriculture, in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture again, statuary, tapestry, porcelain. I would add to John Adams' beautiful sentence, language, heritage, cultural heritage, intellectual sovereignty, maybe revivalistics. I think this is something that we need to read again and again, especially in the neoliberal era in which the humanities are closing down. These are the basic human needs. Of course, you need battery and Wi-Fi these days, but if I ask you where most people are, you would say probably now with COVID, they're not even physiological, but say safety, belonging, love. How many people do you know who reach their self-actualization? I'm talking about the hoi polloi, the masses, the normies, normal people. We say normies in Australian English, normies, the normies. How many normies reach the self-actualization? Very, very, very few. But whilst the Industrial Revolution turned people from seeking food to seeking things, the technological revolution, which is the current revolution that allows me, a zombie, to talk to you from Adelaide to Baja California in Mexico, this revolution will turn people from seeking things to seeking ideas. This is when actually people will go up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, I'm not going to go through this. I will just now ask the question, why language revival? Nelson Mandela said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. I believe in native tongue title. The loss of language, in my view, is more severe than the loss of land. The land, when you lose it, is still there. It might be mined by BHP. It might be raped, it might be slaughtered, but the land is still there. You might not live there, you live on another land, but when the language is lost, then it's not there. I mean, there is nothing there. You cannot touch it. It's intangible. And therefore, in my view, it's much more important than land because it is intangible. So it's the opposite of what people think. Look at what Anthony Forster said. This is in 1843, 1 year before Clamor Wilhelm Schumann wrote down the Bangala Dictionary in Port Lincoln, which is 8-hour drive from where I am in Adelaide. The native would be sooner civilized if their language was extinct. This is an ideology of linguicide, language killing, just as you have suicide, self-killing, just as you have genocide, nation killing, or you have insecticide, cockroach, cucaracha killing, when you kill the cucarachas with insecticide, so you have linguicide. This is an ideology of linguicide. This is another example, George Gray. The ruder languages disappear successively, and the tongue of England alone is heard around. Why does he regard the Aboriginal languages of Australia? There were 400 of them, 400 of them. Currently, only 12 are alive and kicking. I repeat, So let me calculate. So 12 over 400, 3%. So in other words, 3% of Aboriginal languages in Australia are alive and kicking. Alive and kicking means spoken by all children. If your language is not spoken by all children, but rather by a percentage that is lower than 100, it means that your language is endangered. It doesn't matter how many people speak it. The only thing I care about as endangered languages professor, so endangered that I'm the only such professor in Australia, is percentage. What is the percentage of children speaking the language? This will determine whether the language is endangered or not. And I would like to repeat, only 12 languages, which is 3% of Aboriginal languages, which is 400, are alive and kicking. All the rest are either dead or about to fall asleep. Australia ought to learn from New Zealand. In New Zealand, there are two official languages. One is Te Reo Maori, Maori, the language of Aotearoa. Aotearoa in Maori means the land of the long white cloud. Long white cloud. The Maori sometimes call it the land of the wrong white crowd. Wrong white crowd instead of long white cloud. It's a pun. It's a gioco di parole, as they say in Italian. It's a Wortspiel, wordplay. Now, in New Zealand, the other official language, believe it or not, if I had time to ask, I would have asked, it's not English. English is not an official language. It's the language of the deaf, the sign language, the official sign language. Yeah, you know, like this one is good. This one means sex in Adelaide Sign Language. Yeah? I saw a man doing like that. I thought it's Al Qaeda, you know. Oh, you know. But what he was talking to the deaf woman, and this, or you know, like you can say Obama. You know, this is in German sign language. Hitler. In slang, they do it like that. So like Heil Hitler, you know. So this is sign language for deaf people. Australia should have 401 official languages, 400 indigenous languages, and 1 sign language. English should not be official languages. It is de facto, but it shouldn't be de jure. This is the Australian Aboriginal flag. The black means people. People are dark. The red means terrain or soil. The earth here is red. It's not like in Mexico. In Mexico, it's brown. Here it's red. And the middle is the yellow. This is the sun or life. This is my own flag. Black for people, red for land, and as I said, pink for tongue. Right. So the tongue is the mouth of the land, not only the mouth of the people. When you talk to kangaroos in Port Lincoln, you need to speak to them in Bangla. But if you talk to koalas in Adelaide, you need to speak to them in Ghana. This is Aboriginal spirituality. It's a trinity, not il Padre, il Figlio e lo Spirito Santo, as I said earlier, but rather people, land, language. People, land, language. That's my flag for Australia. Of course, it's my own flag. You will not find it anywhere, unfortunately. Now, I would like to show you a small video, just 5 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for questions. How about that? Is it okay, Carlos?
They have just told me that you can continue until like 20 minutes from now, you know?
Okay,
like...
Excellent. So I will first show you a video. Tell me if you can hear it well. Can you hear it well?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Umiwara Mission in outback South Australia.
But I cannot see it.
Language once forbidden to be spoken inside. Many nearby.
Yeah, we're hearing it, but there is.
I know.
I was taken away when I was a kid.
Okay.
And I knew the language. I was learning.
I'm going to share it.
I was taken away when I was
Share screen.
So I have no idea. I was in a boys' home
Can you
for
see it
12
now?
years.
Yes.
Can you hear it well?
Yes.
Umiwara Mission in outback South Australia. As run down now as the local language once forbidden to be spoken inside. Many nearby Aboriginal children were brought here, like Bangla man Harry Dare.
I was taken away when I was a kid, and I knew the language. I was just learning the language when and I was taken away when I was 3 years old. So I have no idea. I was in a boys' home for 12 years, myself and my two brothers.
Steve Atkinson's mother was brought here too, his only link to the Bangla language.
There's no doubt that this place contributed to my mother's, or the decline of the Bangla language for my mother, but I suppose to put it in perspective, it wasn't the missionaries that done that, it was government policy. Even though my mother came in speaking her language, Bangla language, fluently at 8-year-old, by the time she was 16, she left and she couldn't put a sentence together. But just the importance of that, to be able to have that back, couldn't even put it into words.
Words that fail him in English, let alone his ancestral past. Last century's forced adoption policies saw members of the stolen generation taken to places like this mission on the outskirts of Port Augusta, effectively putting distance between them and their language. But while Bangla fell silent in places like this, over in town there's a place where those words are coming back to life. Bangla's reclamation is beginning here at the old Port Augusta School of the Air. Ghil'ad Zuckerman, an Israeli-born linguist, is Professor of Endangered Languages at the University of Adelaide. His bold plan is to revive the language using the memories of the elders and a 170-year-old dictionary made by the first Lutheran missionaries.
Out of 250 languages, 93% of languages either fell asleep already, so they're hibernating, dormant like Bangla, or they are about to fall asleep. So they have some, let's say, some elders who speak it, but actually the youngsters do not speak these languages. So this is one of the world's records in linguicide. In other words, Australia probably is the worst place in the world when it comes to language hibernation or linguicide, language killing.
A seaside people, the Bangla once had many words for sea life. For example, multiple words for shark.
Dindu. Dindu. Let me write. Dindu. The sun is Dindu.
Here, the workshop participants even try to develop new words in language, like internet or computer. But the Bangla of Port Augusta are now a minority amongst minorities, with other tribes with other languages coming in from the north and from the east. So it's now more important than ever to grasp at the snippets still alive and to start piecing them together.
Coming back here and learning the language is something that I've always wanted to know my language, because I grew up knowing my father's side, which is Ghil'ad, but I had no idea what my mother's side was. So I sort of, this reclaiming our language is going to do wonders for my self-esteem as a Bangla man,
The community here hopes they can revive Bangla in everyday situations like street signs, greetings, shopping for dinner, or the names of native animals.
When you reclaim a language, we have evidence that it actually empowers people. So it results in a personal empowerment. People without a language often are people who lost their heritage, their intellectual sovereignty, their cultural autonomy. So there is this feeling of well-being which is related to language reclamation.
It's an overwhelming experience, because having my mother lose her language, and now me being part of that rebuilding and revival of that language is an emotional thing. So I'm proud to be part of it, and hopefully I can do my mother and my ancestors proud.
Your mic is off.
Mute. Okay, so that was a film about the Bangla people. Could you all hear it well?
Yes.
Excellent.
It's okay.
So now we come back to the aesthetic motivation. So we were in the ethical motivations. I hope I convinced you that there is an ethical reason for language revival. And I have to say that this is why I do it. I do it only or mainly or basically, fundamentally for moral reasons. I don't need more than that. I therefore assist reclamations of Sleeping Beauty's languages that were linguicided, specifically languages that were linguicided. So I'm not going to revive Latin, for example, because Latin exists within Spanish, within Catalan, within Italian, within Romanian, yeah? So I am focusing on languages that were linguicided as in killed. But there are many aesthetic motivations too. When you lose a language, you lose a culture, intellectual wealth, a work of art. It's like dropping a bomb on a museum, the Louvre, says Ken Hale, right? That's an ethical, beautiful, diversity-based reason. I believe in cheeses. When I go to smelly cheeses at Adelaide Market, I tell my friends, choose 4 cheeses, yeah? And I always buy 4 cheeses for my children. I love cheeses, but you might be lactose intolerant, lactose malabsorbent, you might not be able to eat cheeses. It's a matter of taste. It's a matter of beauty, diversity. Look how beautiful Australia used to be. That is Australia. It's a huge country. Look how beautiful. So many languages, so many cultures, so many music, so many art, so many everything. Look how ugly. And what is interesting here is that it's ugly for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's monochrome, one monochrome, one color. Secondly, it's straight lines. And now, this is very funny, but it's called, what's the name of that? I'm asking this line between Western Australia and South Australia. So I'm here, I'm in Adelaide. It looks like Italy. You see, like there is I'm here. It looks like a boot. This is between Victoria and Western Australia, there is South Australia. But why is there a straight line here? This is for you in America. This line is a continuation of a line that's divided Latin America between the Spanish and the Portuguese. What was the name of that treaty? Do you remember? Tarjavilla or something like that.
Tordesillas.
Which one?
Tordesillas.
Tordesillas. Yeah, Tordesillas. Exactly. That was a treaty. And believe it or not, this is something that you know now, but Australians have no idea about it. The reason for the line between Western Australia and Northern Territory, you can go to the globe, was that it was a continuation of that line of the Tordesillas. Yeah, Tordesillas. So it's very silly. It's very sad that nobody could care less about the divisions by Aboriginal people. So in other words, Oh, here it is. So now you can see better. These divisions are very complex. They have to do with rivers, with mountains, with other topographic elements. But this one is just like boom, you know, with a ruler. This is horrible. This is what we do not want. We do not want Homo sapiens sapiens, the human who knows she knows, because unlike animals who know, we know, which is another level. So I mean, if you see two cows speaking to each other, and there is a very beautiful bull joining the herd, one cow says, "Moo," and the other one says, "That's exactly what I wanted to say." That's impossible. I mean, if it happens, it means that cows have a sense of humor, which is linguistic in a way. So I mean, this is impossible, and this is why I'm still a carnivore. If you tell me that it is possible, then I'm a vegan, like Peter Singer. This is what we want. We do not want the world to become like a barcode. We want people from all over the world. This is your humble servant again, with a famous singer from Hong Kong, Karen Mok on the left. Rita is a scientist. Ling Ling is Singaporean businesswoman, and then you have an Italian politician. So this is what you want. This is the most complex Chinese character I have ever encountered. It has 56 strokes. It's one character. So like A, you have, this is A, but this one is 56 strokes. It is also endangered. Now, I don't have time to go much through animals, but I will tell you that the survival of the Tasmanian devil is important. What about the survival of the Palawa languages of Tasmania? Why is it that people care about animals more than they care about languages? Maybe because they can touch the animals. Now, I'm not against animals. I love animals. I'm a member of the zoo. I give a lot of money for animals. These are kangaroos that my friend has like babies at home. You know, kangaroos have their rooms. But language is like that. This is a beautiful, endangered grammatical way to express a familiar concept in Yagan, in Tierra del Fuego, in Chile, Argentina, not that far from you compared with Australia. There is a word, mamishapinatapai, with a chle, mamishapinatapai. It means to look one at the other, hoping that the other side would initiate something that both of us really want to do, but so far nobody has had the guts, the balls to initiate. Now, this is one word. I remember having this concept in my mind, but I did not have a word for it. This is the morphemic analysis. This is another one, ikigai. Ikigai, it's like raison d'être, but I analyze it. I know that el original es infiel a la traducción. Yeah, this is Borges. The original is unfaithful to the translation, but this is my translation into English. Ikigai in Japanese is the intersection between what you love, what you're good at, what you're paid for, and what the world needs. So for example, what I'm doing now is almost ikigai. I love it. I love giving lectures about revivalistics. I believe I'm good at it. I hope you believe so too. I think the world needs it, but in this specific case, I'm not paid for it. So it's 3/4 of an ikigai. But what a person needs in life is to find his ikigai. So in general, I have found my ikigai. I'm a professor. I'm paid my salary for doing what I do. This is my ikigai. Most people, most normies do not have an ikigai. For example, a lawyer, the world needs it. Well, okay. He's paid for, unfortunately, a lot of money. He's good at it, yes. Does he love it? I don't think so. I mean, how many lawyers love what they do? I mean, most lawyers do horrible, I mean, kind of technocratic thing. For example, a musician, the world needs it, absolutely. He loves it. My friend, he's a guitarist, Alvalodze, he's the best flamenco guitarist in Adelaide. He's extremely good at it. Is he paid for it? Very, very bad. It's not like the lawyer that you call the lawyer, how much do you charge? So I charge $1,000 for 3 questions. That's very expensive, isn't it? Yes, it is. And what's your 3rd question? Yeah, that's what the lawyer. So I mean, the musician is exactly the opposite. He cannot do that. So you ought to find your ikigai rather than an icky guy. Nahur is an endangered concept. It is a camel that will not give milk until her nostrils have been tickled. If you are not Persian, or at least not ancient Persian, you would have never thought about it. What do you mean? Why should you tickle their nostrils in order for it to give milk? Our imagination as a generalization is extremely limited. It's enough to look at how aliens look. Aliens usually look 2 eyes, 1 nose, and 1 mouth. Do you believe that if there is an alien, of course there are no aliens, but if there is an alien, you believe that they will look like an ugly Asian human being? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But this shows you how limited we are in our imagination, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's the hoi polloi, I don't know. What are the utilitarian benefits of language revival? And here I am beginning to end my presentation because I want to leave some floor for questions, and I know that you need to go soon. So let me just very quickly tell you that I have discovered that language revival results in personal, mental, spiritual, and physical well-being, sense of pride, and self-esteem. It's an antidote for self-loathing, because colonized people all over the world, they hate 2 types of people. They hate the colonizers, and unfortunately, tragically, as a generalization, they hate themselves. And the reason is that the colonizers told them, you are worthless. Your language is rude. Your language is ugly. You speak bad language. This is why if you go to Peru and you speak Quechua, people look down at you. Why? Quechua is a beautiful language. But this is racism that results in self-loathing. This is, in my view, the biggest tragedy of colonization. Not the loss of land, not the hatred of the colonizers by the colonized. Rather, the biggest and the most severe, the most tragic phenomenon is self-loathing. That's the saddest. And what I discovered is that language revival results in an antidote, apropos of COVID-19, an antidote for that self-loathing. And you can find in my book, in chapter 9, an entire chapter about language and mental health. These are Bangla people, happy Bangla people. Language is power. Let us have ours. I would like now to tell you that I have an NHMRC project that looks at that, exactly at that, and I will be very happy to share our articles with you. If you're interested, you can contact me. And concluding remarks, if you're interested in language revival, I recommend you the open, massive open online course, the MOOC. And this is a MOOC that I developed here at the University of Adelaide. It has five sessions. This is a guy that I took my MOOC and I bumped into him in Myanmar, in Burma, which is now impossible to go to because of the revolution again there. And he took my MOOC and he just remembered me from that. It was amazing. This is a Zuckerman, like Zuckerman. And these are the last slides, Australian signs. I don't know if you understand whether you can park on the left or you cannot park on the left. This is what signs in Australia look like. That's another sign. Don't drive like a knob, K-N-O-B. Knob is also kind of an idiot. Don't drive, like knob is this, yeah. Don't drive like a cock, not chicken, cock. A Chinese student thought it was like a chicken rides like that, you know, goes from place to place. No, it's like a cock means like an idiot. It's slang. Don't drive like a wanker, like W anchor, wanker. This is in South Australia. But this is the best sign of all. And this is my summary. If your language is endangered, say you come from an indigenous background, say you speak a specific dialect of your language, even a specific dialect of Spanish, do not allow it to fall asleep. If your language falls asleep, stop, revive, survive. Stop, revive, survive. If you revive a language, embrace the hybridity of the children's emerging tongue, because the language, as I said earlier, will not be the same as the language you're trying to revive. And most importantly, if you are a Spanish speaker, I mean, kind of just standard Spanish, if you're an American English speaker, neither of these languages is endangered. Consider helping others in linguistic need. There are millions of people all over the world, as you know, who need your help, whether they tell it to you or whether they do not tell it to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks a lot, Professor. We do a virtual applause. Well, I hope this was prompt our awareness, and well, maybe we can chat a little bit with the people who's here. So, bueno, voy a también extendemos un agradecimiento a Ezequías Reyes por contactar con el doctor Zuckerman. Y bueno, a Edna, la doctora Edna Pascasio, que organizó este evento. Ahora les voy a dar el micrófono a ellos para que le den las preguntas que hay. Ya hay varias preguntas. Entonces, Edna, adelante. We have some questions.
Yes. Carlos, one question is, how was your approach to these communities?
Okay. So one of the things I would like you to have a look at, and I'll share my screen again, is this one. Let me just see. This is the LARD, the Language Revival Diamond. So my first approach is based on my observation that any language revival, in order for it to be successful, must have 4 components. The first one is the language owners. So you cannot revive a language in the laboratory. You need to revive a language with the custodians, with the ones who own the language. And in Australia, there is actually a very interesting distinction between ownership and usership. Ownership, you can own a language without using a language. Usership, you can use a language without owning. So for example, in the case of Bangla, I use it, but I do not own it. Whereas another person doesn't know anything in Bangla, but he owns it simply because he or she is Bangla. That language owners must be part of it. The other part is the public sphere. So the approach is to go to schools, to go to principals, to go to the government and to say, look, we need this language to be taught at schools. We need signs to be bilingual. We need the landscape, the linguistic landscape with a G, landscape. We need the landscape to change. We need to show respect from the point of view of the public to this specific indigenous language. The third diamond, or the third quadrant of the diamond, is education. Education, we need to have resources, we need to know how to teach, we need to have pedagogical, digital, technological, user-friendly, accessible tools. And of course, the fourth is linguistics. This is when linguists can come, applied linguists, general linguists, and they need to create new resources to reanalyze the dictionary that was written many years ago. They need to work on spelling. Of course, it doesn't matter much how you spell. There is an example here that I discovered. This is, we are committed to excellence, with an S. But in the Australian 1976 population census, Presbyterian Australians used 383 different spellings to describe their own denomination. So I'm talking about native speakers of English who spelled their own denomination in 383 different ways. So it doesn't matter much. By the way, in Spanish, it wouldn't be the case, because Spanish is much easier when you spell. Whereas English is horrific, like you say Presbyterian with a Z, but you write with an S, etc. So coming back to your question, the approach is always to allow the custodians to be at the wheel. You need to kind of get rid of any, I mean, you are always on the background, you are never at the center. So when you take a photo, you need to be on the side. You're never at the center, even though you are the one who did all the work. You're the one who taught the workshop from 8 o'clock until 8 o'clock. You know, it doesn't matter. The control is always in the hands of the Aboriginal people. That's very important. The approach is respect. You ask them always, is this what you want to do? Okay, you don't want to neologize, you don't want to invent new words. Okay, we do not neologize. Sometimes the decision might be stupid in your view, but this is how it is. I mean, I can give you plenty of examples in which I said something which was based on the language, but they said another thing which was based on emotions or whatever. I'll give you an example. I taught the Bangla that the seat of emotions in Bangla is the stomach. So this is where the belly is where you have the emotions. But they told me, no, it's the heart. Now, why do you think they told me it's the heart? Because this is how it is in English, the colonizers' language. And they thought, and they told me, we know, we are Aboriginal people, we know, but actually they said it because of the English language, whereas I knew I had like 50 examples why it is always the stomach that is the seat of emotion. But so it's a topsy-turvy situation, because you are a non-custodian, you know the linguistic truth. They are the custodians, they do not know the linguistic truth, they do not even notice that they give you the English input rather than the Bangla input. But what do? You have to inspire, you can try to explain, but if at the end of the day they want the seat of emotions to be the heart, so be it. The heart will be the seat of emotions. And then 100 years later, somebody will come and will write a book. Oh, Neo-Bangla was very much influenced by English. For example, look at the seat of the emotions. In Old Bangla, in the original, it was the stomach, but now in the Neo-Bangla, it's the heart. Yeah, well, this is what I do in my book. In the first half, I discuss how Israeli is based on Yiddish, which is the revivalist mother tongue, against the will. The will was to speak like Isaiah the biblical, but they didn't manage. They ended up speaking like Yiddish. So this is life. I know in advance what the language will look like. I can predict very, very clearly. Of course, it is their decision how far to go. Do we go the full Monty, meaning do we have grandchildren who speak the language natively? It's their decision. It's not my decision. I am only a stepfather. They are the mother. So if the stepfather believes that the mother is wrong, he can tell her secretly when they go to sleep, look, I mean, you told this guy, the son, but he cannot just tell the mother just to shut up. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous because she's the mother. So you never tell the mother to shut up. So you're the stepfather.
Okay, thanks. Ezequias, you wanted to ask your question?
Oh, yeah, thank you. My question is, has hybridity been well embraced by Aboriginal peoples, or have you felt a sense of reluctance towards it?
So it's a very good question, Yechezkel. Ezekias is Yechezkel, right? Yechezkel as in God is strong. It's a Hebrew. It's a Hebrew.
That's right, sir.
Yeah, Yechezak El. So Chazak means strong. Chazak. Look, it's a very good question. I am honest. I'm a very honest person. I am very, very honest, which is, by the way, a very rare thing in the Anglo world. So without, I mean, I'm generalizing, but, you know, generally speaking, people do not always tell you exactly what they think in the Anglo world. In my world, in my culture, where I come from, people tell you what they think bluntly, exactly as it is. They do not. So I told Bangla people, look, I believe that you will never pronounce Bangala as the original pronunciation. Just as when I speak Israeli, I do not sound like a Semite. I sound more like a Yiddish, like a European. For example, instead of saying qesiso, which means meatball, I say ktsitsa. Again, qesiso. This has a lot of pharyngeality, like in Arabic. Like in Arabic, when you say ya qalbi, my heart, if you say ya kalbi, my dog, it's very bad. I mean, if you tell your lover ya kalbi, instead of ya kalbi, you say ya kalbi, my dog, my bitch, you know, like, no, it's very bad. You need to say ya kalbi or ya albi, you know. So what I'm trying to tell them is, I'm teaching you the pronunciation as IPA, you know, exactly Bangara. But I know already that you're not going to say Bangara because everybody, you know, is a Bangala. And you listen to Aboriginal people in Australia making the welcome to country. It's kind of laughing. I mean, it's like, it reminds me sometimes, I'm not saying all of them, of course, but most of them. It reminds me that when I had my oral examination at the University of Oxford in 2000, I had my robe. I will show you. It was similar to that. I will show you what it is. So it was similar, you know, it's like this one. Yeah, this is an Oxford DPhil, and like that. And somebody was asking me, yeah, this is what it looks like. It's always red, like I like red anyway. And somebody asked me, what are you doing? What I say, I'm going for my Wiwa Woke. I'm going for my Wiwa Woke. Now this English man looked at me as if I had just come out from under a stone, as in like, what kind of a Philistine, what kind of a moron, what kind of an idiot. You mean Vivavosi? Vivavosi is how you pronounce Wiwa Woke, Latin Wiwa Woke in English. Now, there is no lamentation, and there shouldn't be a lamentation on your perspective. This is how you say it in English, Vivavosi. Of course, it's ridiculous that he corrects my Latin, because my Latin, viva voce, is much more similar to the original than viva voce. There is no doubt about it. No, nobody will tell me otherwise. But, you know, this is what it is. So I tell the Aboriginal people, look, when you reclaim a language, you will never be spoken, it will never be spoken exactly the same. You know, in Bangla, there are only I, A, U, 3 vowels. I can hear like ah in some Bangla speech. Another example is in Bangla, you have 2 different R's. One of them is the Spanish R or the Italian R, like Carlos. It's not Carlos, it's not Carlos. And the other one is the English one, Carlos. So you have Carlos and you have Carlos. But in Bangla, these are 2 different phonemes. So it's a little bit like Carlos means one thing and Carlos means another thing. Whereas in English, there is no difference between R and R. I can call Carlos, Carlos, Carlos. Everybody will understand it because it's the same R. It's a little bit like in Spanish, there is no difference between B and V. Yeah, like Obama. Obama, you know, it's like Obama, Obama, Barcelona. But of course, in some languages, B and V are extremely important. So look, I tell them the truth, and some of them might be optimistic, and others might say, yeah, we don't care. We accept what you say, that hybridity is beautiful. It's new diversity. There is nothing wrong with hybridity. As an eighth Jew, Seinfeld said, you know, Jerry Seinfeld, not that there is anything wrong with that. So I think he's talking about homosexuality or something. He said, not that there is anything wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with hybridity. It's beautiful. It's too hot. I'm going to put it there. Just a second.
Okay, so we have just one more question because we are running out of time. So I apologize for the other people who asked, who made a question, but well, I'm gonna read it. Ilian Hernandez says, how can academia help in language revival when the state doesn't have a plan that includes resources for this purpose? So I ask you to try to be very brief,
So
Professor.
the academia as in the academic world, like universities, right?
Yes, I
yeah.
suppose.
Yes,
So,
yes.
as opposed to academia as in the Académie Française, or, you know, like that I usually very much despise. But anyway, the academic, you can do exactly what I do. So language revival is above and beyond my professorship. So my professorship is to teach undergraduates who pay a lot of money to the university, and to teach graduates, PhD students, and they pay the university, and then the university gives me my salary. Now, if I want to do language revival, which I do, I need to, and then there are many things. First, after you talk to the people you want to help and they want you to help them, etc., etc., after you do that, you have to apply for governmental funding. The university will not give you any, I mean, at least here, won't give you any money. I mean, on the contrary, the university will get money out of it. So if I get a grant from the government, the university will take some, I don't know, some percentage out of it, you know? So the university makes money. It doesn't give money. I don't know what it is like in Baja, California, but here in Australia, universities have become a business, you know, like it is not kind of the intellectual pursuit of the past. It's more like neoliberal money-making machine, unfortunately. So you have to apply for grants. You have to apply for funds from maybe wealthy people who are interested in assisting a group of people that has something to do with their past. For example, I don't know, they're married to somebody who has this heritage, or they come from a small village where, I don't know. I mean, there are many. And a lot of what I do, I do a lot of expert witnessing in the federal court. So what I'm doing is I'm an expert of intellectual property brand names, branding. So for that, I'm paid well. And I take some money out of it and I practically self-fund. So I work where I can make money, and then this money I put in a consultancy that then I can use when I go to Namibia or whatever, because the Namibians will not give me money. They're very miserable. You know, they don't have money. So you need money to travel, you need money to print books, you know, like this book, I printed thousands of copies, the Bangali di Mano, it was thousands of dollars, you know, so of course you need money. You need to feed the people who come to your workshop. So, you know, one meal, like last week, you know, can be $2,000. You know, I mean, think about it. You have 100 people. I don't know about Tijuana, but in San Diego, 100 people, you go to a good restaurant, it can be easily $3,000, right? I mean, like 4,000. So you do need money. There is no doubt about that. But you are practically on your own, unfortunately. I have contributed to UNESCO Year of Languages, and now decade of 10 years, so it's coming 2022 to 2032 or 2031. UNESCO will declare this decade of International Decade of Indigenous Languages, IDIL. So I contributed to the assessment of that. So I was a consultant hired by a company that does the assessment for UNESCO. And I'm very happy that UNESCO decided to give such importance to indigenous languages. However, UNESCO itself is not rich. You know, they themselves need to look for money. So at the end, it's whatever you as an individual and whatever, as I said at the very beginning of, maybe I should end with that. And this has to do with money as well. I'll show you here. Never doubt that a small, poor, miserable group of thoughtful, committed, intellectual, big-hearted citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. You don't need Bill Gates or you know, like Mark Zuckerberg to, of course, if you can get a little bit from Mark, wonderful. But what I'm saying is that it's a small group of people. You know, there is a Talmud in Judaism is not the Bible, it's after the Bible. There is a Talmudic sentence that if you manage to save one person, it's like you save the entire world. So you don't need to save the entire world. You need to save just one person. You save one person, you save the entire world. You save one language, you actually save the entire linguistic cosmos. You save the entire. So this is kind of a fractal, hologrammatic way of looking at things. Maximus in minimis. So you look at the big picture by looking at one pixel of the world. So I think that if each of you does a little bit, you know, and you just save one person, then the world will be much better.
Okay, so unfortunately we ran out of time. Desafortunadamente ya no tenemos tiempo para más preguntas, había varias. buscaremos la forma de que, pues quizás hacerle llegar las preguntas al doctor Zuckerman. Le agradecemos de nuevo su presencia, su disposición para esta charla. Creo que ha sido muy inspiradora también en la situación, sobre todo considerando, ¿no?, la situación que vivimos en México, la diversidad lingüística amenazada que tenemos en México y particularmente en Baja California, ¿no?, las lenguas críticamente amenazadas que tenemos en Baja California, o que existen, no tenemos, pero existen en Baja California. Y creo que, bueno, este tipo de conversaciones pueden abonar mucho al trabajo, ¿no? Entonces, a nombre de la universidad, de nuevo, de la Universidad Autónoma de Baja California, de la Facultad de Idiomas, del PIALI y, bueno, del Seminario de Investigación, pues agradecemos la presencia del doctor Zuckerman y también agradecemos la presencia de los asistentes a esta charla. Muchas gracias. Nos estaremos viendo.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Gracias, Carlos.
Adiós.
Gil, saludos.
Goodbye,
Muchas gracias.
Adiós. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.